Here's what nobody tells you about healing from chronic anxiety. The people who actually recovered can't tell you how they did it, not because they're hiding something, not because there's a secret they're keeping from you, but because what they did can't be packaged into a system. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? I spent 3 years drowning in recovery content, podcasts during breakfast, YouTube videos at lunch, books stacked on my nightstand like some kind of self-help fortress. I became a collector of other people's breakthroughs, hunting for that one magical sentence that would unlock my freedom. I watched the same recovery stories multiple times, rewinding to catch every detail, convinced I was missing something crucial. Here's what I found instead: nothing and everything at the same time. Let me explain what I mean. Every single person who healed said the same thing in completely different words. Some called it letting go, others called it acceptance. Some talked about building tolerance, others mentioned befriending the sensations. One person described it as making peace with uncertainty. Another said they stopped fighting. Different packaging, same gift inside. The gift is this: healing happens when you stop treating your nervous system like a problem to solve. Think about that for a second. Your entire strategy right now is probably built on fixing yourself. You're researching symptoms at midnight, tracking patterns in notebooks, monitoring every shift in sensation, collecting techniques like they're Pokemon cards. You've got the 4-7-8 breathing, the cold water face dips, the tapping sequences, the grounding exercises, the mantras, the meditations. But here's the paradox that nobody wants to hear. All that fixing is what's keeping you stuck. Your nervous system doesn't need another breathing exercise. It doesn't need the perfect meditation app, or the right supplement stack, or the ideal morning routine. It doesn't need you to manifest or journal or tap or hum your way to safety. Your nervous system needs evidence that the danger has passed, and you can't fake that evidence. You can't breathe your way into it. You have to live your way into it. This is why recovery stories feel so frustratingly vague. When someone says, "I just started living my life again," you want to scream, "But how?" What you're really asking is, "Give me the steps so I can control this process and guarantee my outcome." I get it. I really do. Uncertainty feels unbearable when you're suffering. You want a map. You want a timeline. You want someone to promise you that if you do A, then B, then C, you'll arrive at point D, which is freedom. You want healing to work like a recipe. Follow the instructions exactly, and you'll get the same result every time. But nervous system healing doesn't work like baking a cake from a recipe. It works like learning to swim. Someone can explain the mechanics. They can show you what it looks like. They can tell you to move your arms this way and kick your legs that way. But eventually, you have to get in the water, and you have to be okay with swallowing some water while you figure it out. You have to trust that your body knows how to float even when your mind is screaming that you're going to drown. Nobody can swim for you, and nobody can desensitize your nervous system for you. The programs that promise you 17 modules and 42 exercises, they're selling you the illusion of control. They're giving you something to do because doing feels safer than allowing. Doing feels productive. Doing feels like progress. Doing feels like you're taking charge of your healing instead of being at its mercy. But when your system is sensitized, doing more is like throwing gasoline on a fire and wondering why it keeps burning. I learned this the hard way. I joined a program once that had so many daily practices, I needed a spreadsheet to track them all. Morning meditation, afternoon somatic exercises, evening gratitude practice. Thought interruption throughout the day. Specific breathing patterns for specific symptoms. There was a different protocol for anxiety versus panic versus derealization versus intrusive thoughts. I lasted 5 days before I had a complete breakdown. I was so busy trying to heal that I forgot how to live. My whole existence became about managing my anxiety, which is just another form of being controlled by it. I was performing healing instead of actually healing. Here's what changed everything for me. I stopped asking, what should I do about this? And started asking, how can I be with this? Tiny shift in language, massive shift in approach. Doing implies fixing, being implies allowing, and allowing is what desensitizes a nervous system. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you wake up with that familiar wave of dread washing over you. Your heart is pounding, your thoughts are racing. Your body feels wrong in a way you can't quite describe but know all too well. The old approach. Okay, what's my protocol? Deep breathing, check. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, check. Remind myself it's just anxiety, check. Maybe I'll journal about it. Maybe I'll do some tapping. Maybe I'll text my friend who gets it. Maybe I need to meditate longer today. Did I take my magnesium? Should I try that new grounding technique I saw on Instagram? The new approach. This feels awful. My body is screaming. I really don't want to feel this way, and I'm going to make breakfast anyway. See the difference? One approach treats the sensation as an emergency that requires immediate intervention. The other approach acknowledges the discomfort and continues with life anyway. One approach keeps your nervous system on high alert, constantly scanning for problems to fix. The other approach sends the signal: we're safe enough to make breakfast even though we feel terrible. We're safe enough to function even when we're uncomfortable. This is what people mean when they say they just lived their life. They stopped making every uncomfortable sensation into a crisis that had to be resolved immediately. They stopped dropping everything to manage their symptoms. They stopped letting their current state dictate their next action. And this is brutally hard when you're in the thick of it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It feels counterintuitive to go to the grocery store when you're having a panic attack. It feels dangerous to get back into social situations when your body is screaming at you to hide. It feels impossible to stop researching when your brain is convinced that the next article will finally have your answer. It feels reckless to stop doing all the safety behaviors that you believe are the only thing keeping you from completely falling apart. But here's the thing about sensitized nervous systems. They're stuck in a pattern of perceiving threat everywhere, and every time you react to a sensation like it's dangerous, you confirm the threat. You tell your nervous system, yes, you're right to be alarmed. This is dangerous. Good job staying vigilant. Keep it up. Even when you're using healing tools, if you're using them to make the feeling go away, you're still in that threat response. You're still treating normal sensations like emergencies. You're still reinforcing the very pattern you're trying to break. Real desensitization happens when you let the alarm ring and make breakfast anyway, when you let your heart pound and go to the meeting anyway, when you let the thoughts race and play with your kids anyway, when you let the derealization be there and go to the coffee shop anyway. You're not ignoring it or suppressing it or being reckless with your health. You're acknowledging, this is uncomfortable and I'm safe enough to continue. This is why people can't give you a step-by-step process, because the process is your life. Every moment is an opportunity to respond differently. Every uncomfortable sensation is a chance to practice not making it into an emergency. Every trigger is an invitation to show your nervous system that you can handle it. Some days you'll nail it. Some days you'll fall back into old patterns. Some days you'll do everything right and still feel terrible. That's not failure. That's the messy, non-linear reality of healing. I want to address something important here: the difference between tools that support healing and tools that prevent it. Tools that support healing, things you do because they genuinely feel good and enhance your life. Maybe you actually love yoga. Maybe walking in nature brings you joy. Maybe you find meditation genuinely peaceful when you're not using it to escape discomfort. Do those things because they add value to your life, not because you're trying to fix yourself. Tools that prevent healing. Things you do frantically to make uncomfortable sensations stop. Researching symptoms at 2 in the morning, constantly checking in with your body to see if you feel better yet. Doing breathing exercises 12 times a day, not because you want to, but because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. Anything you do from a place of, I have to do this or something bad will happen. One comes from a place of self-care and genuine enjoyment. The other comes from a place of fear and compulsion. Your nervous system absolutely knows the difference. Here's another thing that makes recovery stories so hard to decode. People often try multiple approaches before something clicks. They'll mention 3 different coaches, 5 different books, 2 different programs, a podcast that changed everything, a YouTube channel they binged. You might think, great, so I need to do all of that too. But what actually happened is they kept exposing themselves to the same core principles until finally, they were ready to hear it, ready to stop looking for the loophole, ready to accept that healing requires walking through discomfort, not around it, ready to stop outsourcing their recovery to someone else's system. The information didn't change, their readiness did. You might not be ready yet, and that's okay. I wasn't ready for years. I kept searching for the easier way, the shortcut, the technique that would let me heal without having to feel everything I was avoiding. I wanted the version of recovery where I felt good first and then re-engaged with life, where I got better in isolation and then emerged, healed and whole. That version doesn't exist. But here's what does exist. Thousands of people who felt exactly as terrible as you feel right now, who were just as convinced they were the exception, the one person who couldn't recover, who were just as desperate for certainty and timelines and guaranteed outcomes, and who eventually recovered by doing something radically simple and radically difficult. They stopped fighting their nervous system and started living their life alongside it. They stopped trying to feel better before re-engaging and started re-engaging while feeling terrible. They stopped waiting for permission from their symptoms and started acting according to their values. They stopped performing healing and started actually living. If you're watching this hoping I'll give you the secret formula, I'm going to disappoint you. There isn't one. The secret formula is that there is no secret formula. But I'll give you something better than a formula: permission to stop looking for it. Permission to close the 47 browser tabs about symptoms. Permission to unfollow the accounts that make you feel like you're not doing enough. Permission to stop asking, but how exactly? When you already know what you need to do, you're just terrified to do it. Permission to accept that this is going to be uncomfortable, and that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. The question isn't, what did they do to heal? The better question is, what did they stop doing that was keeping them stuck? They stopped researching constantly. They stopped avoiding everything that triggered symptoms. They stopped treating every sensation like a medical emergency. They stopped waiting to feel ready. They stopped making their entire life about managing anxiety. And they started living, messily, imperfectly. While feeling absolutely terrible sometimes, they started showing up to their life even when their nervous system was throwing a tantrum. That's the secret nobody wants to hear. That's what everyone is trying to tell you in their recovery stories but can't quite articulate because it's not a technique you do. It's a way you be. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to your experience. And that shift can't be taught in 10 easy steps. It has to be lived. Leave me a comment if this landed for you. Tell me what you're ready to stop doing. Subscribe to this channel for more.